They told me I wasn't even invited to my own father's retirement ceremony. The guard at the Naval Hall stopped me. "Ma'am, your name isn't on the list." Behind him, my father smirked, whispering, "She doesn't belong here." My chest burned, not from shock, but from years of being invisible. Inside, my brother, the golden boy, soaked up applause. What no one knew was that I outranked them all. That day, I wasn't going to beg for a seat. I was about to walk in and make the entire U.S. cloter. Navy rise to their feet for me. I'll never forget the chill of that morning. The air tasted sharp, almost ceremonial, like the ocean had decided to hold its breath. I had just stepped onto the sidewalk outside the Naval Hall when the young security officer raised his hand. His eyes scanned the tablet, then flicked back to me with that mix of pity and finality. "Ma'am, your name isn't on the list." The words cut deep, but it wasn't his tone that broke me. It was the smirk just a few feet away. My father, Captain Richard Carter, the man whose shadow I had lived under all my life, leaned toward another officer and said it loud enough for me to hear, "She's not even invited." My chest tightened, a knot pulling every ounce of oxygen out of me. Not from surprise, no, from recognition. From that old familiar ache that had been my companion at every family dinner, every Christmas toast, every single photograph where I was either cropped out or standing half a step behind. And inside that hall, my brother Michael was shaking hands, soaking up applause, the golden boy in his spotless uniform, the one they had written the family story around, the one who carried the Carter name like it was destiny. Meanwhile, me? I was supposed to fade back into the crowd. Again. For a second, I actually considered leaving. My car was still parked out front, and I could have driven away quietly, just like I had so many times before. But my hand brushed against the cold metal of the ID in my pocket, and I felt something shift inside me. Not today. Because what nobody in that hall knew, not my father, not Michael, not the rows of decorated guests, was that just weeks earlier, I had been promoted to Rear Admiral. A rank that didn't just equal Michael's, it outranked him, outranked almost everyone in that room. The Navy had kept it quiet until the official announcement. And I had kept it even quieter from my family. So no, I wasn't going to argue with the guard. I wasn't going to beg for a seat. I wasn't going to let them write me out of the Carter legacy one more time. I was going to walk into that hall on my own terms, with the truth literally shining on my shoulders. And when I did, there would be no mistaking who I really was. My pulse was steady now, almost too calm, like the years of silence had hardened into resolve. I turned, walking slowly back toward the parking lot. The sound of laughter and music floated out from the hall, mocking, taunting. But each step I took only made me taller. At my car, I opened the trunk and unzipped the garment bag. White fabric gleamed like fire in the morning light. My dress uniform, perfectly pressed. Each seam sharp, each crease flawless. One by one, I dressed. Each button fastened with deliberate care. The stars came last 3 silver points that carried the weight of every mission, every sacrifice, every invisible victory. When I pinned them in place, I swear the air shifted. My reflection in the rearview mirror wasn't the quiet daughter anymore. She wasn't the afterthought at family barbecues or the name skipped in holiday toasts. She was Admiral Carter. I stepped out of the car, heels clicking against the pavement, my breath steady. I wasn't walking toward humiliation anymore. I was walking toward revelation. And the moment those doors opened, nothing in that family, nothing in that hall would ever be the same again. The hall was alive with chatter, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Through the double doors, I could see polished metals flashing under the chandeliers, the kind of spectacle meant to celebrate a lifetime of service. But I knew better. This wasn't just about my father's retirement. It was about legacy, about making sure everyone knew Michael was carrying the Carter name forward. And me? I wasn't even supposed to be there. I lingered in the hallway, the sound of the MC booming through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor Captain Richard Carter for his decades of service to our nation. and we celebrate Lieutenant Commander Michael Carter for his extraordinary leadership. The applause was deafening. My father sat in the front row, chest out, smile wide, Michael right beside him, soaking in the glow. It was like watching a stage play where I had been cut from the script before the first rehearsal. I slipped inside quietly, unnoticed at first, taking in the faces I had grown up with, family, friends, neighbors, officers who had known me since childhood. Their eyes slid right past me, as if I were just another guest, not blood, not Carter. I thought about Thanksgiving dinners where my father would raise a glass and say, "To Michael, our future Navy star," while my own achievements, aced competitions, commendations, quiet victories earned nothing more than a nod. I thought about Christmas mornings when the display cabinet always had a new photo of Michael in uniform, while my medals stayed tucked in drawers, hidden, forgotten. And I remembered the sting of overhearing my father once tell an old friend, "Becky's smart, sure, but she's not a war fighter." He hadn't meant it to be cruel. To him, it was just fact. In his world, real worth came with boots on the ground, orders shouted across battlefields, not in a dimly lit room deciphering codes that saved thousands of lives. That truth carved a scar inside me. Now, as I stood at the back of the hall in full dress whites, those memories weren't just echoes, they were fuel. The MC continued, voice ringing with pride. Michael Carter represents everything the Navy stands for: courage, leadership, sacrifice. He is the very definition of the Carter legacy. The room erupted again, the applause sharper this time, like a slap across my face. Seriously? The Carter legacy? I gripped the brim of my cover, my nails pressing into the fabric. My chest tightened. My throat burned. For years, I had swallowed that bitterness, let it sink deep where no one could see. But standing there now, I felt something else rising afire I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. I wasn't going to be erased tonight, not again. And little did they know, the very definition of the Carter legacy was about to walk down that aisle and take her rightful seat. I stayed at the back, my heels sinking slightly into the thick carpet, every nerve alive. The applause faded into a low hum, but inside me, memories roared. I thought about the countless times I had swallowed humiliation just to keep the peace. The graduation party when Michael got into the Naval Academy, the backyard, had turned into a parade. Old vets swapping war stories by the grill, my father glowing like the war had already been won. 3 days earlier, I had placed first in a national cyber defense competition. I'd whispered it to Dad, heart pounding, desperate for just 1 ounce of pride. He nodded once. "That's nice, Becky, but it's not a commission." My voice cracked that night as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. That was the rhythm of my life. Victories that no one saw, silence where applause should have been. It wasn't just holidays or graduations, it was birthdays too. One year, when I made Lieutenant Commander, my father raised a toast at dinner. Michael's name rolled off his tongue like honey. Mine never left his lips. My chest burned that night so hard I thought I'd choke. But the silence had given me something: freedom. Without their approval, I could build my career without waiting for their permission. I dove headfirst into intelligence work, the kind of battles that never made headlines. Operations with names like Iron Shield, Midnight Falcon, Silent Echo. I became the watchtower, the one who spotted threats before they ever touched our shores. And yet, my family never knew. To them, I was still the daughter who pushed papers. But here, tonight, standing at the edge of this hall, that invisible life pressed against my ribs like it wanted out. I could almost hear my mentor's voice, the one senior officer who told me years ago, "One day, Carter, you'll need to stop fighting in the shadows and let the light hit you. Don't wait too long." My father had written me out of the Carter story. Michael had taken the spotlight, but I had carried the weight of battles no one else even knew existed. And tonight, the world was about to find out. My plan was forming even as I stood there. Not a speech, not an argument, not a fight. Something cleaner, stronger, undeniable. I would let the uniform speak. Let the stars on my shoulders carry every word I'd never been allowed to say. So I straightened my back, exhaled slowly, and placed my cover under my arm. My heart was steady now. The fire no longer rage, but clarity. When the right moment came, I wasn't going to just walk forward. I was going to claim the space they had denied me my entire life. And nothing, not my father's smirk, not Michael's shadow, not decades of silence, could stop me. The string ensemble softened to a halt, and the MC's voice thundered again. Now we invite all Carter family officers to the front row. My breath hitched. That was it. The trigger. Chairs scraped forward as my father rose proudly, Michael at his side, his wife glowing with pride. My mother followed quietly, eyes flicking toward the back just long enough to meet mine, and then away. Like she couldn't bear to look too long. I froze for a half second. The old instinct whispered, "Stay put. Don't make a scene." But then, something unexpected. A Navy SEAL at the far side of the room caught sight of me. His eyes widened. Recognition. Not from family dinners or photos, from somewhere else. Somewhere classified. He stood, sharp, commanding. His voice cracked the room like a gunshot. Admiral Carter, front row. My heart pounded. Heads whipped toward me, confusion rippling through the hall. Then another SEAL stood. Then another. It spread like wildfire, row by row, a wave of uniforms rising in perfect discipline. The MC stammered into the mic, ladies and gentlemen," but his voice was drowned by the thunder. Hundreds, thousands, it felt endless. Boots hitting the floor, medals flashing under the chandeliers, voices uniting, louder, stronger. Admiral Carter, front row, The sound slammed into me, rattling my bones, and then, impossibly, it grew. The echo seemed to carry beyond the hall, beyond the base, like the entire US Navy was standing behind me. Millions of men and women, the weight of generations, saluting not the forgotten daughter, but the admiral I had become. My father froze mid-toast, glass trembling in his hand. Michael's jaw slackened, his perfect smile collapsing. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. I stepped forward. My heels clicked steadily, each sound swallowed by the storm of voices. Eyes followed me, commanders, ensigns, admirals, all watching with something I'd never felt in this family before. Respect. Mini twists sparked with every step. I caught whispers, "She's the one from Midnight Falcon." The Watchtower, that was her? Names of operations no one was supposed to know, slipping out in awe. This wasn't staged. This wasn't forced. This was recognition earned in silence, finally shouted in unison. I passed Michael, his face pale, his hand twitching at his side like he wanted to stop me, but he couldn't move. My father's eyes locked on mine, something unreadable flashing there. Not pride, not yet, but not dismissal either. The aisle opened as though rehearsed. I reached the front row. Officers shifted aside without hesitation. I lowered myself into the seat, placing my cover neatly on my lap. And in that silence, as the roar subsided into stillness, the MC swallowed hard, leaned into the mic, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Rear Admiral Rebecca Carter." Applause thundered, but I barely heard it, because for the first time in my life, they couldn't look past me. They had to see me. The applause rumbled on, but underneath it, I felt a deeper shift like a tide turning. The men and women in that hall weren't just clapping for formality. They were clapping because they knew. And then it happened. A vice admiral I hadn't seen in years broke through the crowd. His chest was covered in ribbons, his face carved with the weight of decades at sea. He shook my hand firmly, leaned close, and whispered, "It's good to finally put a face to the name. The Watchtower." Oh, my throat tightened. That code name one I hadn't heard outside a secure briefing room rippled through the guests standing nearby. I caught the quick exchange of looks. They knew, they all knew. Mini twist. My family thought I was the quiet shadow, but the officers in this room, they had been carrying my reputation like gospel. One by one, more approached. An old SEAL commander clasped my shoulder. "You rerouted that satellite, didn't you? Silent Echo? My men came home because of you. And there's..." Another officer bowed his head slightly. "Iron Shield, you saved the fleet. The names of missions I had buried deep in silence, secrets I had lived with alone, now spoken aloud in reverence. Not to boast, but as proof that the invisible battles mattered. And it hit me. That seed my mentor planted years ago. One day you'll need to stop fighting in the shadows and let the light hit you. This was the payoff. I hadn't just walked into the hall. I had walked into the truth. Michael edged closer, eyes darting between me and the admiral surrounding me. His voice cracked, barely audible over the din. How long have you been keeping this a secret? I turned my head slowly, meeting his gaze with a calm he'd never seen from me before. 15 years. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He stepped back, as if the weight of that number knocked the breath out of him. My father hadn't moved yet. He was still frozen, glass in hand, expression carved from stone. But I could feel his stare burning holes into me. The man who once whispered I wasn't a warfighter now faced the undeniable. The twist wasn't just that I outranked Michael. It wasn't even that I had saved lives. The real twist, the one no one had expected, was that the forgotten daughter had become the Navy's quiet backbone. And tonight, the silence I had lived with was breaking in front of the very people who had written me off. The hall seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, the clinking of glasses, the whispers, even the faint notes from the string ensemble, all of it vanished into silence. Then the sound returned, but not from the band, not from the MC. It came from the pounding of boots. At first, just a few. Then rows, then whole sections. SEALs, aviators, submariners, Marines in dress blues. Every branch represented in that room rose to their feet in perfect rhythm. Admiral Carter, front row! The chant exploded again, shaking the walls. My heart slammed against my ribs, but my steps were steady. This wasn't just a standing ovation. It was something bigger. The voices surged, growing louder, deeper, filling the vaulted ceiling until it felt like the roof itself might crack open. And then, somehow, impossibly, it expanded beyond the hall. My mind painted the picture as my chest tightened. Sailors on carriers at sea rising in unison, Marines on distant bases snapping to attention, millions of men and women in uniform across the globe standing as one. In that moment, it wasn't just me walking down an aisle. It was every invisible battle I had fought stepping forward with me. Every mission code name whispered in shadows. Every quiet thank you never spoken aloud. The forgotten daughter had become the face of a fleet. My father still stood at the front, glass frozen midair, his expression crumbling. For once, the captain who had filled rooms with his presence was dwarfed, overshadowed by the storm his own daughter had unleashed. Michael's eyes followed me, wide with disbelief. The smirk he had carried his whole life was gone, replaced by something raw, something dangerously close to fear. I passed him without a word. My heels struck the floor like thunder, each click another nail in the coffin of the Carter story they had written without me. The aisle opened as though it had always been waiting. Admirals and commanders moved aside without hesitation, shoulders squared, heads bowed. When I reached the front row, I didn't wait for permission. I turned, lowered myself into the seat, and placed my cover neatly on my lap. The chanting slowed, then died into stillness, leaving a silence so thick it pressed against my ears. For the first time, all eyes were on me. Not because I had demanded it, not because I had begged, because I had earned it. And in that silence, the revenge burned brightest, not in anger, but in recognition. I had stepped into the very space they had spent years denying me. And no one, not my father, not Michael, not the Carter name itself, could ever erase it again. The program wound down, speeches tapering into background noise. Conversations bloomed in small clusters, but I stayed seated for a moment longer, letting the stillness wrap around me. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered inside me, inside the hall, inside the faces of everyone who now looked at me differently. One by one, senior officers approached. A vice admiral leaned close and said quietly, "You carried more than most of us will ever know. It's about time the world saw it." His grip was firm, his gaze steady, Others followed, a nod, a handshake, a word of respect. They didn't ask for details, they already knew. Michael finally stepped near. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something hesitant, almost boyish. His voice cracked as he whispered, "How long? How long have you been doing all this?" I met his eyes, calm and certain. 15 years. He blinked. His breath caught. For once, Michael, the golden boy, had no words. And then my father moved. Slowly, deliberately, he set down his glass and walked toward me. He didn't speak. He didn't offer a speech or apology. He simply looked at me, really looked, as if for the first time he was seeing not just his daughter, but the Admiral. His gaze lingered on the stars on my shoulders, then rose back to my eyes. Finally, he gave a single, slow nod. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't pride spoken aloud, but it was something I had never received from him before, acknowledgement. Months later, I visited my parents' house. The same brick walls, the same creak of the front steps. Inside, the scent of Mom's roast filled the air. But what stopped me cold was the display cabinet. Front and center, where Michael's Academy photo had always sat, now gleamed one of my medals, its ribbon arranged with care. Dinner that night felt different. My father asked about logistics of operations, not with vague politeness, but real curiosity. My mother leaned in, eyes bright, asking what it was like to lead teams across continents. Even Michael, fork frozen midair, asked how I handled knowing lives depended on my calls. And for the first time, they didn't look past me. They listened. After dessert, Michael lingered. His voice was soft, almost breaking. "I always thought I had to stay ahead of you. Turns out I never could." I smiled, not to dismiss him, but to finally accept that we had carried different burdens all along. Driving home that night, the road stretched endlessly ahead, the hum of the engine steady, the stars outside blurring against the dark. I realized then, the most important recognition had never been theirs to give. It was mine all along, and I had finally claimed it. Justice doesn't always come with fireworks or medals. Sometimes it comes with silence finally breaking and the truth standing tall where no one can ignore it. For years, I thought my father's approval would be the finish line. I chased it in every competition, every promotion, every lonely midnight. But the truth? The finish line was always inside me. It was the moment I stopped waiting for permission, stopped begging for a seat at the table, and chose to walk in on my own terms. That night at the Naval Hall, the Carter family story changed forever. Not because my father nodded, not because Michael finally saw me, but because I finally saw myself. If you've ever felt invisible, written out, or underestimated, remember this. Recognition begins the moment you recognize yourself. And once you do, no one can take it away. If this story hit you, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful revenge and family drama stories. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is finally being seen.